What is up, summoners? Welcome back to the channel for the Road to the Labyrinth guide. This is chapter 4, quest number 5, so 4.5. This has got Safeguard in it again. I hate Safeguard, but thankfully the best way to play around it is to have strong bleed champs. In 4.5, there's 4 difficult fights. You've got Venom, Rhino, Ultron, and Nightcrawler. On the left side, I brought in Magic and Doctor Strange there to deal with Venom, but really you could use Voodoo. You could bring in Scarlet Witch. Either of those would be fine as well. On the right side, the far right hand there, Beast is just kind of an all-around utility player. Decent amount of regen, but also a good strong bleed. Black Widow I've brought in not only for Rhino, but I've also brought in for Ultron to help lower the evade chance with him. Really, you could swap her out for Elektra, Karnak, Falcon, Gwenpool, any character that you lower defensive ability accuracy with, you could bring them in. And then finally, we've got Wolverine. You need a strong bleed champ for this. He'll be your main character that you're going to use. X-23, Wolverine, Gwenpool, Archangel, even Black Panther to some degree would work well. But I prefer Wolverine for his excellent regen. So the first fight here, obviously everybody's probably familiar with this one. This probably, what's the word I want to use? He's kind of the gatekeeper for 4.5. If you can't get through him, you're going to have a hard time with the rest of the fights, especially once you get to Venom, Ultron, and obviously Nightcrawler. But he's a good overall test to see as far as where your skill level is at, because you cannot stun him, you can't place bleeds, armor breaks, poisons, nothing like that. It just makes for a very long fight. The reason why I like Black Widow here is because of her signature ability. From time to time, she will break through the Safeguard node and actually does quite a bit more damage than normal. There's a couple of areas where you can attack. One is when you bait out specials like that, you'll be able to attack. Secondly, when you get done with a combo, if you stand there and hold block, typically the AI will try to break your block with a heavy attack. So obviously dash back, come back in, that's your second opportunity to attack. That one you really only want to implement though as long as you've got about, above 50% health. Once you get below 50% health, you don't really give yourself any margin for error, because if he does hit you while you're below 50% health, you're probably going to be dead. So in that case, you can bring in a Captain America, either World War II or Classic Cap, and basically just stand there and take the block damage and then attack him whenever he, he goes in for the heavy. The other play here is to bring in Wolverine. You basically can take the block damage and then also regen through all of that. He's playing me yo-yo back and forth here, and right there he kind of lulled me to sleep, but then he caught me. From this point forward, I really can't try to bait out any heavy attacks. Just looking to push him into his special as much as I can, and thankfully I am able to get him down here. This is a fairly long fight. There's really no quick way to push through it. You can't add bleeds or anything like that. So it's just a long fight. He caught me there at the end. I think those were the only 2 hits that I took. Oh no, it was only 1 hit. But yeah, it took 206 hits to finally get him down. The second fight here with Guillotine, obviously like all the other nodes, is Safeguard node, just like everybody else. Unblockable S2 starts with 2 bars of power. Really not that difficult at all. You could bring in your main damage dealing character here. In my case, it is Wolverine, but you could bring in X-23, Gwenpool, Drax, anybody that's got a strong bleed you'll be able to work through. The best way to play this, if you're a little bit unsure of her animations, is and you can see I have pushed her into an S2, but don't push her into an S2. The S1 is much easier to time, not that the S2 is difficult, but S1 is not unblockable, so even if you make a mistake, you can still block through it. However, if you forget that the S2 is unblockable, it's gonna eat you up pretty good. Overall, not a difficult fight at all. What am I at? 142 hits here. I absolutely love Beast. I mean, look at that. Look at that damage between the combo damage that's coming in, between the bleeds that are placed on her. You would never think that this was a Safeguard node. He blows right through it. All right, the next node up then. I'm trying to think here. Oh, Superior Iron Man, yes. And this fight, yeah, as you can see, I skipped forward a little bit just because I ate an S1, and what I want to show you is why I like Wolverine so much. Really no need to panic. I'm just not going to use any specials here. I'm going to let my power bar get all the way to 3 bars of power so that when my regen kicks in, I'm getting the maximum amount of regen possible. But really, just have to remember that that S1 is unblockable. For whatever reason, when I was doing my testing and playthrough here, I didn't typically forget that the S2 on Guillotine was unblockable, but for whatever reason, the S1 on Superior Iron Man I kept forgetting. I actually found it a little bit easier. For whatever reason, the timing of it I think is easier if he's in his S2. But the biggest thing here that I would probably point out to you is if you do a 5-hit combo, maybe don't dash back immediately if he has an S1, only because sometimes the timing of all that, if you finish a combo, 5-hit combo, and he has a bar of power, if you immediately dash back and you're not 1000% paying attention, when he goes to use that S1, sometimes it can clip you. But outside of that, not too difficult. One other thing as far as gameplay goes, when he dashes forward, typically he always follows that up with a second hit immediately. So always have your guard up, either ready to block, parry, or get ready to evade back. This fight here, he can be a little bit of a pain, just because he does hit fairly hard once he does get a couple of buffs built up. And also the S2 can be a little bit of a pain. Sorry, I hit my volume button there. But the S2 can be a little bit of a pain, even if you're fairly confident in evading the first parts and blocking the rest, you're still going to take a significant amount of damage. So my idea here was to bring in magic. I can power lock him down and really never have to deal with an S2 at all. The other thing that's helpful that I'll show here is if you get to a point in the fight where it's gone on for a long time and he's got a lot of buffs up, and even through block damage he's hitting hard, if you use your S3 for magic, she's actually going to nullify all of those buffs and basically reset the fight over for you. So before the S3, he had probably like 5 or 6 buffs. Now after the S3, he doesn't have any. And remember, for this node, he actually can duplicate up to 20 effects, 20 buffs, so he does actually hit fairly hard. The other way to do it, and I think the way that I prefer, I don't want to say that, when you've got Doctor Strange, he's going to be nullifying and removing those buffs as you go through the fight. And then also, I know you're not going to be able to power control, but basically I just try to bait out the S2 when I have my armor buff up. That takes minimal amount of damage, really. And then, as you can see right there, what is it, about 200? Yeah, it's probably about 800 damage is what I took, which is really not that bad considering that he does have a regen, which although it is not very strong, it is more than enough to compensate for that little bit of block damage that you're taking. So I actually quite liked Doctor Strange here. Dr. Voodoo would also work well. Scarlet Witch would work well. Really, if you're confident in your ability to evade back on that S2, you can really bring in about anybody. But I think it's easier to control the amount of buffs that he's getting. Another obvious answer here would be Wolverine. I could have very easily used him, and if I was really going through this, I probably would have used him. But for testing's sake, I wanted to show somebody else. But again, like many of the other nodes, he can just stand there, block through all the damage, wait for his opening, and then regen all of that throughout the fight. Doctor Strange was just in the arenas, so if you've picked him up and you're thinking about, maybe a place to use him at, you don't have Scarlet Witch, you don't have Voodoo or anybody like that yet, this might be a good spot for you to run in and to test him out. He's kind of purpose-built for fights like this. Really good against Cosmic Champs that have a lot of buffs that you can nullify. And then we'll end it with the S3, and doesn't hit real hard, but more than enough to finish off the fight. 1465 is the cap for Safeguard, so I hit that every single time. These next two fights, we've got Daredevil, who I think he's got like 100% radar sense. Basically, I think he can evade all projectile damage specials. And then Storm has an unblockable S2, bias to S2. Really, neither one of these fights I thought were worthy of spending a whole lot of time with. They are fairly simplistic. The Daredevil one for sure is really easy. If you've got X-23 or Wolverine or Beast or Guillotine, or not Guillotine, but Gwenpool, anybody who's got a strong bleed is going to tear through that fight. And then very similarly with Storm, the fight is not difficult at all. Like I said, I would have used Wolverine, but for sake of testing, brought in somebody else just to show you a different fight. I think that she's easier to evade the S1 because it really doesn't matter proximity-wise. If you're close to her or far away from her, whenever she spins up as she's coming down, you evade back and you're fine. If you do get clipped by the S1, it's probably not the end of the world. However, if you get clipped by the S2, which is unblockable, that's going to kill you. So I would rather just keep her down to 1 bar of power. So that moves us into, this is probably, no, I mean, this is easily as difficult a fight as the final boss in Nightcrawler is. The one redeeming quality here is that it's very easy, because he has the extra power gain, to push him into 1 bar of power. So you constantly have opportunities to attack him after the S1. The biggest thing here, and by far and really the only difficult part of this entire fight, is you have to be wary at all times of that evade. And that evade always seems to pop in at the most opportune time. The reason that I brought in Black Widow was, one, to deal with Rhino, to try to push through some of the safeguard, but secondly, and probably more importantly, it was for this fight. Sure, her signature ability, and remember, my Black Widow here is only rank 4, and I think she's only signature level, I want to say like 20 something, maybe even lower than that. It's really, really low. I've never actually duped her full dupe level. I've only put a few signature stones into her. So saying all that, I just say this: if you've got a higher ranked Black Widow, definitely bring her in here. Electro would probably work fine as well. Just make sure that you're just being very wary when you don't have a debuff up on her, that 80% reduction is not active. He does do quite a bit of damage if you push him into his S2, so try not to push him into the S2 as much as you can. What you'll see here at the end of the fight is that I foolishly, I do that, and it does kill me. Even the block damage there's 1,000, there's 700, and it followed up by another 700, so that was over 2,000 damage just from block damage on the S2. But I bring in Wolverine right after that, able to finish him up. Now this last fight, this is a pain. Not gonna lie about this one. Typically when I fight Nightcrawler, I always try to push him into swashbuckling. However, he has a 20% increase to his abilities, meaning he's going to be evading 20% more often. So I found it almost impossible to get enough hits off in a row to be able to push him into swashbuckling. By far, your best option here is just to spam as much as you can your parry. When you do parry, I think what you'll see here is you can get 3 hits in successfully without any concern of him evading because he's stunned. That 4th hit, though, you need to watch out for. That 4th hit, he actually is not stunned for. I really like Wolverine here. Again, you're just going to be taking quite a bit of damage one way or the other through blocking or not. He's probably going to manage to clip you at least once throughout the fight, so having somebody who can regen is very helpful. Having somebody who's got a strong bleed is helpful for dealing with the safeguard. But as much as possible, try to push him into his S2. The S1 gives him an additional evasion effect, an evasion buff. And he's going to be evading almost the whole time. So if you do, if he does use his S1 and has the evade buff up, really don't use the 4th hit. Try only to use the 3 hits when he's stunned and get out of there, because more than likely he is going to evade. And if he does evade and hit you, it's pretty much going to be game over. Towards the end of the fight here, he does manage to clip me, and I'll slow it down and show you. But yeah, this is just a really, really long fight. It's a slow fight. Yeah, right here. Here it is. Hits me for 2,000, so that's basically 5,000. And on top of that for another 5,000. So you just got to be wary, man. If you do make a mistake and you try to be over aggressive and hit him when he's not parry stunned, he's going to get you like that. So we bring in Beast, and I am able to successfully finish off the fight here. Overall, 4.5 is a very tough challenge. There are 4 fights in there: Rhino, Venom, Ultron, Nightcrawler. Those are really everything else outside of that is a cakewalk, but those are the 4 fights that you have to prepare for. So do your best to bring in a strong bleed champ. I would suggest, as you've seen here, bringing in Wolverine. I know if you've got Gwenpool, she probably will work really well. Also, X-23 has excellent bleeds, but again, not quite as strong of a regen. And I think that the regen aspect of these characters is actually a little bit stronger than the bleed aspect. So again, that's probably why I would bring Wolverine. Ultron, you can bring any character that's going to lower defensive ability accuracy. You can use them again for Rhino. And then Venom, any strong Mystic champ that can power control or that can remove the buffs will work just fine there as well. Overall, 4.5 is a good challenge. It's a lot of fun. Hope I didn't skip through this too quickly. I tried to kind of narrow in on just a few fights that were more difficult here. But definitely, if you have any other questions, any comments that you want to leave on this, leave those down below, and the community, I'm sure, would love to hear them. All right, guys, 4.6 will be coming out next. Keep an eye out for that. Until then, thanks for watching, and have a great day.